So next one on the list is the Taran Tactical 5KU Ballerina slide. So this is the one I've actually wanted. And again, it's £85. So I thought for the money, I'll get both the Glock 34 and the Ballerina. So that's how it comes. It is a sort of hybrid slide. That to me looks almost Glock 34, sorry, Glock 45 length. Oh, okay, that's something worth noting. So that's almost Glock 45 length, so... okay, fine, that's interesting. It comes with a comp. I was hoping the comp on this was threaded, but I have a suspicion that they've chosen to go for a like grub screw held one. I'm sort of feeling as if I'm right there. Oh, interesting. So that is interesting, isn't it? Okay, so it's sort of a lug and twist, and then you fix it in place using a grub screw. So that's interesting. Let's look at the finish of this. So barrel already has a little bit of wear on it, which 5KU, isn't it? You kind of expect that. The finish on the slide, though, I'm actually quite impressed with that. Let's take the barrel out. So and there's deep engraving, and then there's sort of more delicate engraving. I can't see anything wrong with the finish. There's some machine marks on it. I'm not sure if you can see there, but there's like the worlds of machine marks, but again, that's sort of immaterial. Okay, that looks good. Again, steel slide stop, Taran tactical plate. The barrels are sharp, so I cut my finger open whilst taking apart the Glock 34. So just be aware of that. The barrels and lots of the corners are sharp, like especially around here. You'll cut your fingers if you're not careful. Okay. All right. RMR plate, standard cover plate. You've got your fixings for the barrel, so we'll do that. This is probably one of the better designs. So kudos to Detonator for coming up with the design. The spring sort of protects or stops the barrel from wobbling too much inside the outer barrel. It's a good design. I'm very pleased with it. Before that, you had the Guns Modified did their sort of barrel stabilizer, didn't they? Just put that in. Okay. You can normally snip these off. There we go. There we go. So that's your front sight done. Take that away. I am going to leave the comp out for a minute because I've had bad experiences with compensators, especially on Gen 5 and Glock 19s. So, right. So that seems to move fine. Sits nicely. What I would comment on is if you've got a keen eye, you can notice that the barrel doesn't sit in the slide perfectly. There's like a gap, which isn't ideal, but it's 5KU, so what did we expect? That seems to sit flat. Yeah, we'll just use the flat plate for now. Again, they've machined it nicely so it fits the serrations. It's worth noting actually, the screws that they've provided are aluminium, so it's both in the Glock 34 kit and this kit they're aluminium, so they're not magnetic, obviously, and they won't be as robust. There we go. That doesn't immediately seem to have the bowing problem that the Glock 34 kit had. So what I'm going to do is put the guide rod in. That sits nice and flat. It's a little bit stiff. Let's have a... cycles quite well. Okay, so that's promising. Right, so next step is to put the comp on and see how that goes. So let's put the screw on. These comps I find, because the barrel moves, sorry, the recoil rod moves, I find that these compensators often mess with the action. So I am wary. Let's have a look. That's not a good start. I don't think this will work. Let's have a look. Dubious. So that's jammed, and that is jammed because this won't move, but it does seem to move. You can probably hear my son crying right now because it's bedtime, so I might not be able to fire this. Okay, let's take a cheat to this. So that is a Glock 17 recoil rod. This is the Glock 19 recoil rod. Oh, it's still... There you go. So that works. Yeah, so I think the problem is, if you can see there, the guide rod is flexing and it's not lined up with the base of the comp. And does that? Okay, so that's something to work out. There are a few solutions to that. I might try a there's a couple of ways around this that you might be able to try. What I'm going to try to start with is I'm going to go straight back to a completely stock recoil rod. So I've got my recoil rod here. I think, because the recoil rod I'm using here is actually a Tech one, which is slightly larger. Put that on. I've got enough of the parts here to do it, so let's have a crack. I need that. Take those and that and that and that. So if we the spring's sort of irrelevant at this point because it might, regardless of whether it slides back into place or not. Let's try. Still no dice. Okay, so sometimes if you wiggle this round, okay, so it looks like there's some modification that needs to happen. It's a little bit confusing because if you manually I wonder if it's it might not even be the recoil rod that's the problem. It might be, I'm going to try something. So it looks like it is catching around here. So I wonder if we smooth this off a little bit. Lost my bit there, hadn't done it tight enough. So it might actually just be these barrel lugs that are the problem. All right, well, this is something to look at in the long term, but basically as you can see, without the comp, it seems to work very well, and it's with the comp that there's a problem. So if okay, I think I see what the problem is. So what you might want to do is, and probably what we do is sand this down. All right, I'll do an update on that later on. I think the trick will either be to grinding out some of this, or grinding out some of the comp, or sanding down some of the recoil rod. Might try the recoil rod first, as I've got a few stock ones that I can sacrifice. Alright, thanks for watching. At least if you buy one of these, you know what you're getting yourself in for. They are not perfect, but again, for 85 quid, can you go wrong? So I will be getting the bomber TTI stuff for this as well. Yeah, all right. So I've had a bit of tinkering, and it's now all fixed. As you can see, there's wear happening on the front of the barrel, which is unavoidable. So I've tried a few different things. I have tried a TTI hop unit. That didn't work. I'll talk about that in a minute. I have tried sanding the front of a Glock 17 recoil rod, and that started to work. That very nearly worked, but it didn't quite. I then tried a Garda Glock 17 recoil rod, and again that sort of worked, but it kept jamming, which I think is because this was coming loose. And then eventually I stumbled into some luck. So as you've seen on another video, this is the Glock 45 recoil rod. This fits in here, and with a little bit of shimming, short stroking, it allows you to, it reduces the travel, and it allows you to lock back at the right point. And now it moves completely unhindered. So he says, there you go. This is quite awkward. I have to do it this side. Ooh, run out of gas. Yep, run out of gas. So let's try that again. Yeah, that's good enough for a demo, isn't it? There you go. So that is the solution. There is the other thing I've had to do, and I'll show you on the bottom here, is, if I get the way, and I'll try this on the Glock 34 in a minute. So I've added some tape here to shim the blowback unit slightly, and that should reduce the chances of the hammer failing to reset. So yeah, so that seems to be the solution. So stock hop unit, Glock 19 recoil rod. It's obvious that 5KU have not actually tested this. because if they had, they would have figured out that this never, it was never going to work with the compensator. But yeah, that's my advice, is if you're going to buy this for 85 quid, use a stock hop unit, and you buy one of the Garda Glock 45, Glock 19 Gen 5 recoil rods, and it will work. Right, one last update on this. So obviously this is the Ballerina slide again. So I had a closer look at this, and I found one more problem in this, which is the same as the Glock 34. So effectively down here, not sure if that's in focus, down here and down here, the space for the blowback unit has been milled too much. So on this side, you were talking about 2 millimeters too much. You can, don't know if I can get a good camera angle on that. Basically, there is a small rod I've had to put there. The rod is less than the width of that Allen key head, and that's stopping the blowback unit from bowing here. And then again, I've put in a M1.4 grub screw there, and then glued it in place, so that will stop both sides here from flexing when they run over the hammer. And then again, shimmed the back there. So those are the solutions to the blowback unit and the hammer not resetting. Again, I've just chucked in a stock blowback unit in here to be able to check the setup. For me anyway, let's find it here. That rod back there is a steel rod, so I've cut that to size as best as I can, glued it in place, and then it's been slightly easier to just notch the blowback unit so that it sits correctly on the rod. So yeah, so again, it's a 85 quid slide, whereas the bomber version, which I'm sure would work out of the box, is 4 times the price more than. So I guess it depends on what you want. If you're fairly confident with your pistols and you don't mind only spending 85 quid and spending maybe a couple of hours just doing the modifications, then this is very good. I have to say, the finish on it, I'm really impressed. They've done a really, really good job aesthetically. I was thinking about the recoil rod earlier, and you can actually see if I undo this again. You can see here where the anodizing has started to rub off because of the recoil rod, where I've tried to force the recoil rod to fit in place. So what you could do is, if you had the right equipment, such as a Dremel and a small flat sanding pad, you could just sand this out more. So I would sand this out, and then you should be able to use a Glock 17 recoil rod instead of a Glock 19 one, or as I said earlier in the video, you could use a Glock 19 one. Yeah, that's it for the 5KU stuff. I'm not sure I'll be buying any more 5KU stuff, purely because I'm not going to use it. All of the stuff on this channel I buy out of my own pocket, and if I can sell it secondhand and recoup some of the cost, then I will. So for example, these slides will be resold. and I never make any money from it. So to a certain extent, I'm not going to waste a huge amount of money on buying things that either are not to my taste or I'm not going to use. So this was a bit of a exception because A, they look very nice, and B, they were very, very cheap in my opinion. So yeah, we'll see you next time. I have got some max tac self-regulating CO2 mags on the way, so I might do a video on that. I'm also waiting for Garda to put out the steel threaded barrels for the Glock 34 Gen 5. So those are sort of things in the pipeline. Thank you for watching.